Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for joining us today for a seat at the table with my lovely co-host today, the incomparable Miss Charlotte Plains. We had a fun time with our male panel, and as I was saying in our intermission, as well as to the males that we were while we were texting back and forth, we had to make sure we got them on and off real quick so we can get the real show started, the real panel going. Yeah. So. But no, I just like to thank the guys from earlier, and they clearly understood that they needed to go so we can get the real show started. Seat at the table, living in two Americas, yes. And there's no one better to bring to the table as a co-host, really host together with me than someone who's been influential in my life. It's always good to have people outside of your door, outside of your own blood, that you could always lean on from a young age clear up to now, where I have more gray. She has none, and I have the only gray at the table. So yeah, I appreciate it.
Mine's covered up.
It looks good. Looks good on you. So again, here at the seat at the table, our sole purpose, overall responsibility is to ensure that we engage decision makers with resources, to ensure that they are presented to our community at large, in particular the Black community, so that we make sure needs are met with resources, and this way we grow, enhance, learn, and succeed. So without any further ado, I have the distinct pleasure and honor of introducing our panel today. The second panel, comprised of our lovely women. And first, we have Miss Tina Nixon, who is the Vice President of Mission Effectiveness and so many other roles, we'll say, for UPMC Pinnacle.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Next, we'll have Ms. Mainika Ojo. She heads up diversity and inclusion for the Pennsylvania Turnpike Commission. She also has the distinct pleasure of being the now former mayor of Hanover, Pennsylvania, first Black mayor in Hanover's history. So I'm sure she'll have a perspective talking about two Americas there. We have Ms. Tamika Hatcher, who does great work around the education and police training for the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission.
Good afternoon.
Great. And of course, Harrisburg's been taken by storm, but those of us that have been around for a little bit, we're definitely not taken by storm. The young lioness of the city, I'll say, brilliant beyond just words and titles. The incomparable, we'll say, Miss Anna White is joining us.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Queen.
Yes. Now we have Miss Kim Bracey, who serves in the role for the governor's Center for Local Services, but I always say when I call her resources instead of services. She also is the former mayor of York, Pennsylvania, first Black mayor elected to York, Pennsylvania.
Isn't that C. Kim Bracey?
My apologies, C, the one and only C. Kim Bracey. Good afternoon. See, that's why I need a co-host. See there?
I've known her for a lot of years.
There you go. And last but certainly not least, is someone who has taken education by storm, seriously, behind the scenes for years. Somebody I depended on with regards to as I matriculated through various positions in the field of education, and always had stern and direct direction for me. Also a product of the Children's School of Africa, as we heard in the last panel. Um, we'll say Dr. Celeste Overton Morris.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello. So as we know, my job, especially my job on this panel, is to bring all of us together statewide. And we know there is a lot of times I joke with my young sister from out in the western part of the state regarding sometimes Pittsburgh and Philadelphia forgetting that Harrisburg is actually the capital. But she's always welcoming when I come to Pittsburgh, and she's always welcome here in Harrisburg. So I want you to you got a chance to meet some developers and people that were impacting economic development in Harrisburg and in Pittsburgh from the male perspective. But this sister here, she puts the brakes on big time projects if it's not fully inclusive. She runs the Hill District CDC from the western side of the state, Miss Marimba Malyans. So what we'd like to do is open up, let you all take a couple minutes just to introduce yourselves with regards to why we're here today, and that is to address two Americas that we live in.
Yes.
And what we're asking is that you wrap your comments around what you've experienced, what you continue to live through daily, the current activities that goes on in America that you face down every day and overcome, as Black women in America who knows you're Black women in America in leadership roles. So with that being said, we'll just open up to whoever would like to go first at this time. Please have the stage.
Good morning, Karl. This
Good.
is Marimba, joining you from Pittsburgh, of course, and always happy to be here with you and the beautiful women on this panel. Excited to, explore the conversation today, and also just happy to be able to share the moment, of celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday with other freedom fighters and people who are carrying on his legacy of justice.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Ojo. And first of all, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. And I'm definitely humbled to be here with all of these women that are so accomplished and so doing so much for this community. I also want to acknowledge that this is Martin Luther King's day that we celebrate. And I also want to acknowledge someone that is no longer with us, who is Vera Cornish, who at this time for the last 10 years or so, we would have been at an event with her. So I really appreciate this opportunity to participate in this panel with you, Karl and Charla. Pleasure to meet you. Actually, it's the first time I've heard a lot about you, but hadn't had a chance to meet you, but definitely looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Celeste Overton Morris, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you this afternoon. When I looked at the panelists on the flyer, I was definitely in awe of all the great women who are gracing this podcast today. And I look forward to exploring a conversation about how we can dismantle systems that continue to promulgate the two Americas that exist right now. And we can definitely see it in, from the events of January 6th and beyond and before. And so just excited to be here. And thank you, Karl and Charlotte, for allowing us to share our voice.
Joining us.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Tina Nixon. As Karl mentioned, I'm Vice President of Mission Effectiveness, Diversity, and Inclusion for UPMC Pinnacle, and it is truly an honor to be with you this afternoon as we continue conversations around equality and racism and institutional racism and health disparities and inequalities that take place in our communities. I'm excited to be here and excited to be part of this conversation.
Great to see you. Welcome.
Definitely. Do you really think I'm going to call on women to go? Like I could tell y'all what to do.
I will go. I know. Good afternoon. My name is Anna White, and I am equally as excited, humbled, and honored to be here amongst women whose shoulders I absolutely feel like I am standing on. So I thank you guys for the work that you guys have done in the city and in the state for young women like myself and so many others, pushing the envelope to have these difficult conversations. So I am excited as an Afro-Latina to be able to present perspective about the two Americas and being mindful of the importance of lifting ourselves up and consistently being a mirror to the other side for them to understand what it is that is necessary to be done to align the two Americas, but also helping us to celebrate who we are and being firm in our space in America as well. So I am humbled and honored to be here, and I look forward to the discussion.
Great, great. I think there may be one young lady left.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is always an honor to be here, particularly with the professional women I get the opportunity to talk to and work with. And it's such an honor to also see Miss Peg, someone I never call that, but all that to say, I mean, it is good to be with you all. The subject matter we're to talk about, oh, wow. I mean, you know, I'm really looking forward to the conversation because where do we begin? We are African American women of color who do our best to ensure seats at the table for those that look like us, those that we want to bring on and help shape the community around us, and also ourselves sometimes fighting for that seat, to have that voice, to make that continued difference in our communities. This is going to be an interesting conversation, a good conversation, and always with these ladies, things to think on afterwards and ways to think about creating continued change. So thank you so much for having me this afternoon. I am honored and look forward to the conversation as well.
Great to see you.
Definitely.
Okay.
Miss Hatcher.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the invitation. Like all the other ladies have said, I'm just absolutely thrilled and delighted and honored to be amongst such an accomplished and established panel. It is it's humbling. And I'm also glad to be here on Martin Luther King Day. I can't think of a better way to celebrate the life and the legacy of Dr. King than to be here with you all on a seat at the table. I want to first commend the brothers who did a great job of level setting for our conversation today, as we're going to begin to explore the two Americas. And as women, as Black women, we have the dichotomy of dual identity. We are both Black and we are both female. And I don't know about anyone else, but I can just speak for myself and just say that in my life, I've always led with my Blackness first, because that's what shows up first. Before anybody even sees me or recognizes me as a woman, I'm Black. And so my belief is that as Black women, when we enter the space, we're coming in as mothers, we're coming in as wives, we're coming in as daughters of Black men. And I believe us to be one, and we're showing up in our identity as Blacks. Now, I'm a civil rights educator and a civil rights advocate, have been for the last 20 plus years. And I'm so thrilled to be sitting on a panel today where my mentor, Mr. Homer Floyd, who hired me when I was just shortly out of Lincoln University for my first real professional job at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission, And I made a career at the commission doing civil rights work. He taught me so much about the history of civil rights. And so if you will indulge me for a moment to get us started on this conversation, I want us to think back to some great Black women, civil rights icons who are still alive and are with us today. Miss Ruby Bridges, who is 66 years old, who when she was only 6 years old, integrated the William Frantz Elementary School in New Orleans, Louisiana. I want us to think back to Miss Claudette Colvin, who was 15 years old back in 1955 on March 2nd, when she refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery, Alabama bus 9 months before the legendary Miss Rosa Parks, who is rightfully recognized as the mother of the modern civil rights movement and the first lady of civil rights. But there's so much that comes with us as Black women. Even talking about Miss Colvin, who a lot of people who don't know about, even though she did it before Mrs. Parks. And that's the other thing, Miss Colvin, Mrs. Parks. Rosa Parks was 42 years old. Claudette Colvin was 15 years old, and she was pregnant and she was unmarried. And even to get into that, she was pregnant by an older man who was married. So people were looking at her as some type of harlot, but let's deal with the fact that she's 15 and she's been pregnant, and the abuse of power from a grown man to a child. Like, we won't even get into that. That's a whole nother conversation. But Miss Colvin is still alive today, and she's 81 years old. And I also want to bring to mind Miss Elizabeth Eckford, who integrated the public schools, Little Rock High School in Arkansas in 1960. She's still alive today and was 79 years old. And you think back to that iconic picture of a young girl, she was 15 years old at the time, walking the gauntlet of white supremacists who were angry and yelling and hurling the same type of racist insults that we saw happen last week at the Capitol. And she did this, walked through there by herself, fearless. And even at 15 years old, she was told, don't let them see you cry. Don't show any emotion. So she's wearing her glasses, and behind her glasses, she's having to hide her tears and hide her emotions from being assaulted just for wanting to go to school. So this is the foundation of where we come from and where we show up in this space as Black women now, Black professional women. And all of us, we've had the privilege of having education and the benefit of all of that. But there's so many else that come with us who maybe did not always enjoy all of those same benefits, but know that they're here too. They're in this space too. They're a part of the conversation too. And we can't exclude them from the conversation. So that's a lot. I know I've said a lot, and I want to allow the other ladies a chance to talk, but just bringing it up to today where we're talking about Sandra Bland, who shows up, and we'll get into her, I'm sure, as we have the discussion more. Nobody believes for a minute that Miss Bland hung herself in a jail cell. She just started a job. I think it was Texas A&M University, so she's there coming to work, and she had the audacity and her name is Sandra Bland, but she was anything but that. Had the nerve to get spicy with an officer on the side of the road. She ends up arrested, and the next day, dead, suspicious, So
America.
That's the two Americas.
Right there, especially when you just highlighted the events, domestic terrorists who stormed the Capitol in an attempted coup just last week. Fiery, fierce, and first are oftentimes our Black women. So with that being said, before we get started, I'd just like to just continue. Tamika and I attend the same church. And I'd just like to ask everybody to keep her mother in prayer with regards to overcoming her illness right now. And so we're claiming healing as we did in church yesterday. And, the Reverend Richard Hampton at Turner Memorial Missionary Baptist Church.
Sure.
So, yeah.
We'd also like to, again, keep in prayer all those families, particularly the Wilson family that Susan just recently lost her husband, Sylvester. For all those who are suffering with COVID and other illnesses, we want to keep each other in prayer, uplifted, giving comfort. Of course, we can't do the traditional like we do, go by, sit, and do all those things to comfort each other. but cards and prayers and drop-offs are always welcome. So we want to, not only to Tamika, certainly for her mother and her family, but also for those who are suffering.
Definitely. And the frontline workers,
yes,
we failed to mention them.
Absolutely.
First panel.
Mostly look like us.
That's right.
Us women.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Listen,
So,
I'm a co-host here.
Yeah, I know. But again, I'd like to thank the women and welcome you all to this podcast. There's some strong women on here, some ones who have been through the muck and the mire, and have traveled different roads, and we're excited to hear about what has brought you to the place where you are now. Just to kind of open it up, this morning I was watching Good Morning America, as I always do with my cup of coffee. And they talked about Mahalia. Mahalia, they're doing a Lifetime story on Mahalia coming up in a couple weeks, I believe. But one of the things that struck me in the conversation, which I didn't know, was during Dr. King's march, the March on Washington, Mahalia was the one, I guess King was kind of going through his speeches and saying different things and hitting some points, but Mahalia was the one who said to him, tell him about the dream. And so from her encouragement, I guess he had been discussing his dream, privately with certain folks, and she must have been one of them. But when she said, tell him about the dream, then that's when he went in. So when we talk about women, giving our men and the civil rights movement then and now that extra step, that's what we want to talk about. So let's go, ladies. Let's have it.
And where do I come in off of that? But to say, thanks for being here. But we can talk specifically. Why don't we start off with Tina? Because we're talking from a healthcare perspective.
Sure.
Courageous. There's several that actually participate in a meeting of sorts. Where we encourage each other bi-weekly. Okay. And I'll tell you, I had to stop the meeting one day. Not stop it, of course, but I had to interject at one point because it is a meeting for our Black women who are in these decision-making roles that oftentimes are the only ones. Mm-hmm. And what do you think happened in that meeting, in that discussion? The only thing they started highlighting at one point was how they got to encourage the brothers, how they got to help us, how they got to, and I was just like, it's happening. And so that nurturing attitude that, and we had that, several of us on the call here, had that. Mm-hmm. So today, I'm just going to ask that we allow this to be about you all and allow this for you to have the video that came on was level setting for a particular reason. It was because we want to talk to you and for individuals watching this podcast to hear how we can help you, how we can encourage you, how we can make sure that you all know that you're safe, you're protected, you're valued, you're necessary. And if you come off as fiery, we embrace that. We don't see it like the other side, the other America. We see it as now we really get ready to get deep. Right. And so there's everything to be said about your authenticity, your willingness to be here. And with that being said, let's work. What say ye?
Yeah. Let's go down.
Let's just go. I know this one on. Okay. Lioness, Ms. White, get us started.
Oh boy. I think from my perspective, we oftentimes have the conversation of how we can rise and bring everyone else with us that looks like us, right? We have the consistent kind of feeling of assignment to really elevate other Black women, but also the assignment of elevating our Black men. And in this space, it comes with a lot of needing to be prompting when it comes to self-care, when it comes to mental health, and how we keep ourselves full in order to pour so much into everyone. So I think that when we are looking at the space of these two Americas, and especially trying to bridge a gap, if bridge building is appropriate even for certain things. Being able to really look at how do we honor our voice as Black and Brown women and not allow for our voice to be lost in any of these transitions, because we are by nature, like you said, very selfless. And I think that we just really honor the idea that we are the village, we keep the village together. And it is our responsibility to really be the gel that keeps families and villages and communities together, and making sure that we are very unapologetic about what that looks like as Black and Brown women, being able to take the time to request, demand that we honor ourselves and be able to put ourselves in a position where we can operate as our best selves, and really just looking at how to build spaces of allyship, spaces of respect and honor between ourselves and our brothers without necessarily losing who we are as people. So I think that when we discuss the two Americas, we do look at our role in how we pioneer and set the stage in our America, but even speaking across the board to the other side, if you will, how do we unapologetically tell our story in a way that is passionate, in a way that is authentic, and in a way that is still going to be honored and respected by everyone, in a way that doesn't limit who we are as people and what we naturally come with. So I think that in our space, we oftentimes struggle with that as Black and Brown women, because there is so much on our plate. And although we do rise to the occasion, right? We saw that in Georgia, we had to come save the day once again, right? We are consistently putting on our cape and consistently running into fires and consistently doing what is necessary for us to do. We just ask that less of that burden of having to come in to save the day happens by being very clear and intentional about how other individuals can lift that burden or lift that weight off of us, right? So it's not that we cannot save the day, it's that we should not have to wait until the bottom of the ninth after being ignored, after being dismissed, after being pushed to the side and not acknowledged, in order for someone to say, ugh, we realized we couldn't do this without you, now come save our lives, right? So we always want to make sure that we put ourselves in a position to still be honored while we are doing our work.
Thank you. Tina Nixon, you want to come on and share your thoughts with us?
Yes, and just to build upon what Anna was saying, you know, two words that she captured: intentional and deliberate. I think, you know, it's especially in the healthcare space when there are so many women of color that are dying at a higher rate of everything: chronic disease, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension, obesity. I think we need to have not only have real conversations, but put things into action. What we do know, especially in healthcare, that racism in healthcare is the #1 killer of Black people. Racism in healthcare is the #1 cause of America being 23rd in the world for maternal mortality. Racism in healthcare kills more Black people than police, COVID-19, Black on Black violence, drugs, and white nationalists. I think we really have to continue the conversations, but put some action behind what we're doing and be deliberate about taking services to our Black and Brown communities with individuals that look like them, that have the expertise to provide those services. We can no longer sit back and think someone else is going to do this for us. We have to do it for ourselves. We have to do the research and make sure we're doing our due diligence, not to only care for ourselves, but to care for our loved ones. But we cannot expect anyone else to do this work or fight this fight for us.
Great.
Absolutely.
We were just on the call the other yesterday. I was on the call, and we were talking about in the healthcare side the need. And Don Rico Colden was somebody who was on there and kept highlighting the need for us to be involved with participatory research.
Yes.
For that empirical data. So that's something we definitely want to highlight. Monica, if you could come on in with us.
Hey. Well, I want to pick up on the part that Tina left off, which is the to be deliberate and to have action behind much of the conversation that we're having. One of the things I heard earlier is that Black women are strong, and we do need to put ourselves in a position where the strength is not an excuse, to have everything for the most part thrown at us. And we do need to make sure that we're standing, as we always have, alongside the Black men through this struggle. One of Martin Luther King's quotes, his most famous, is "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And I know in the roles that we play as Black women that we definitely understand that it is important for us to ensure that there continues to be justice. We're taking care of our families. Many of us are taking care of children, aging parents, so on and so forth, and holding up the community in a way that I feel it's important for us to really relook at as Black women, because of the fact that we're holding that title of being strong and having that level of strength. I personally do not feel that it's a title that we all need to hold. We need to be able to let go and to let loose. Balance is definitely important. Uplifting other women is a great way to, to take care of that as much. But as we move forward in this conversation on MLK Day about what's happening within our race, let's not do anything but move forward and put some action behind it. I think we've kind of had way too many conversations and discussion about where we are. And for the most part, many of us on this call today are in roles where we can definitely take deliberate actions to ensure that there's fairness and equity amongst our group, especially with women, where we have that duality of being Black and women as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Certainly, you're exactly right. We see a lot of meeting and praying, and then everybody goes back and meets and prays in their own corner. We don't collectively come together and move forward. So we have to remember to pray and move your feet, as it's been said. Certainly, you're also correct in the fact that we as women take on way too much sometimes. And we have to be able to say, you know what? I got too many bags here. Let me drop a couple of these bags off on somebody else's step, learn to stay in our lanes and do what we do well, and allow others to empower others to do the work and come alongside us as we're going. So I thank you, for you're right for that perspective. Next, we'll have, who didn't we hear from?
Ms. Morris.
Yes, I was going to say Dr. Celeste Morris.
Yes, yes. Thank you again for allowing me to participate in the panel. I think, building on what Monica said, thinking about the ability for us to kind of share the burden with and educate young people as they're coming up, teaching them the value of who they are and the struggle. As Martin Luther King said, this is a continuous struggle. So it's not just about what happened yesterday. It's also about what's happening today and what's going to happen tomorrow. And how are we preparing ourselves as Black women to be engaged in a way that's meaningful and, as Tina said, intentional and deliberate. When we've had these conversations, sometimes there's been misinformation, right? And so that's when people get information that is not true, but it's not intentional that the truth is not being shared. And then we get this disinformation where it is very intentional, that the sharing of the information is not true. It's meant to harm us. And so I think we have to be deliberate and intentional about what kind of information that we receive as Black women and what we share with other Black women as we seek to empower them. So this idea of, as you shared, Charla, about being a superwoman, right? And so some of that is disinformation, because that is what, a lot of times white people have said about us to make us seem inhuman sometimes. So just really thinking about how we talk about ourselves and how we talk to our young women about who they are and their role in this important work as well.
Yeah, I would ask. So I ran across something here. A lot of the ladies on this in this space right now have experience with diversity and inclusion. I ran across an article some time ago, and I believe I sent it out to several of you, and it talked about hiring a chief diversity officer won't fix your company's racist culture. Could someone touch on that?
Well, I think it's me again, Karl. Much of the discussion on diversity and equity and inclusion, many of us have been doing this work for many, many years. And one of the things ultimately that has to happen if you're a practitioner in this area here is to get your organization to really realize that the work has to be done with everyone at the table and not just the diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. So it will not. It essentially will not, because that's a huge burden, and oftentimes it's typically women of color in these roles. But the huge burden, if you're inside an organization and your goal is to make everyone, feel that diversity, equity, and inclusion, you can only, if you're doing it as a practice within an organization, you can only set the stage or set the foundation for sustainability practices that support diversity, equity, and inclusion. But really, at the end of the day, if you're an experienced practitioner, you have to realize that you have to put it back on your executive team and all the other people that are part of that organization to do the same. And what that means is simply is that there has to be a level of accountability when those measures aren't met. And that goes into not only into your processes, policies, practices, and training, but it goes into the individual as well and their individualized decision making. And so, that's where the struggle becomes when you're in an organization. Because if you look, there has been studies that's talked about this, and typically 3 years is the average time frame in which a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer actually works within a firm. So if you've gotten more years than that in, you're pretty successful at that point. But it really takes a good while to really ingrain it into an organization. But every step of the way means that there has to be some accountability. And we fall short many times when that accountability is not there.
Absolutely. And if I could just add on to say, many people think that it's a quick fix, but when you're looking at racism that is systemic across an organization, you're talking about changing people's minds and changing their hearts and having them unlearn behaviors that were never addressed. For many of us who've been doing this work for, I think, Tamika, 20 plus years, Monique, 20, it's not easy, and things don't change overnight. So if you come into this with the delusion that we're going to put this person or these programs in place and our culture is going to automatically, magically change, that's not the case. Again, and that I have not seen that happen in many organizations throughout this country. So it takes work, it's hard work, and you have to make sure you have measurable outcomes.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more.
Can I jump in here?
Sure.
Sure. The word accountability.
Hey, that's fun.
The word accountability is what stands out to me. And it is I think where we struggle most in terms of meeting our goals of progress, both within our own community and outside of our community. I have found particularly, and I think this is particularly specific to women in leadership. We are not always brought up to be leaders of that assure accountability, because with accountability means you are exercising your power, you are exercising your authority, and oftentimes it means that you are holding the line on something. And anyone who understands the tenets of genderism and sexism knows that women are not generally taught to embrace their own power and their own authority. So I have found accountability to be especially challenging as a woman in leadership, and something that is frequently frowned upon. And yet, accountability is the quintessential element of progress. How else will you measure your progress if there are not specific metrics, if there are not specific goals to which you are aligning your success? If there, it reminds me of Frederick Douglass's quote, "Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will." And so I think that, I just want to remind us, and I know that we all show up in our spaces in different ways, and just all women in leadership, that, exercising your power, assuring accountability to the greatest extent possible is something that I think we all need to, develop muscle around, and to get really comfortable with. The work that we do in many cases in our own communities, and I'm certain I shared this with most of the women on the panel, discourages us from standing in our power. It discourages us from holding people accountable, no less oftentimes men in power, and most frequently white males in power. And so we just have to really, I think, it takes a pivot and a shift in our mindset in order to do that consistently, because it can be very scary. It frequently means that you will be targeted. It frequently means that you will be undermined. And so at the end of the day, we just have to know what it is that we are most committed to in our work, and consistently show up with those accountability measures, and be prepared to when possible, deliver consequences when those accountabilities are not met. So I just wanted to contribute that for now.
Absolutely. And you're so right. The accountability issue very frequently rears its head, particularly around funding issues. Whenever we try to hold those who are receiving dollars for services in our community, particularly where we know that they're not having any impact, but they're the ones who continuously get the funding. They're the go-to guys when it comes to the children programs, or they're the go-to guys for the health education within our communities. Yet we still see those same issues. Nothing has changed, and you've been getting millions and millions of dollars for the last 10, 15 years. So when you talk about accountability, it is critical, and it's critical that we who are in these various fields and at these tables are emphasizing that we want to hold you accountable for the dollars that you're spending or not spending, for the services you're providing or not providing. And it is, then we of course become the heavy lifters. We're the ones who are always the naysayers, and we're the ones who are trying to bring down established organizations and programs and things. But somebody got to do it, because if we're not seeing results in our communities, then we need to be making sure that those who have always received stop receiving. So let me go on to, last but certainly not least, C. Kim Bracey. Kim and I have worked together for at least 20-something years, right, Kim? We want to bring you in so you can.
It's been a while.
Since y'all were five.
Yeah, about two. Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
It's been a while, and as I listen to my sisters talk, it's just, there's a lot of thoughts going on. I don't want to lose sight of the question that Ms. Saunders, Lisa Saunders, and I think Karl, you might be tracking those, just came in through the chat.
Yes.
So as to talk a little bit more about balance and how we've done that. Okay. But I can't help but think, and Charlotte mentioned it, I mean, we've been in the trenches and working together, as many of you have, for years. And here in the wonderful community city of York, right in the heart of it all, Pennsylvania, if you will, that whole diversity, inclusion, accountability, all of those things came into play. So, you know, you get this community development director, look like me, dreadlocks and whatever else was going on at that time in my life. You know, folks were like, okay, how real is this? And then she wants to be mayor. She's going to run the city of 45,000 people, 450 employees, police and fire, and folks that just really, yeah. So to serve as mayor for 8 years, 2 terms, slowly, I don't say slowly, but deliberately and intentionally bringing in people of color, younger people, folks that are as smart as the next person, that was once in those seats, that were city residents too, by the way. You know, many were scratching their heads, and then we did a good job. So there's that. And I can't help but go back to what we see nationally. The outgoing president's cabinet didn't look anything like America. But the one before that did. And hopefully this one will too. And I really don't want to think about it in the way of partisanship or parties, but the whole accountability piece. And in my opinion, being in position to make those deliberate and intentional appointments and changes is part of what we do as well. I get, we all can't hire all of our cousins, and in some cases we don't want to do that. But we have to be the ones that put people in position that look like us, because nobody else is doing it. Even at the executive director level, I mean, I got to push and fight for that where I'm at today, because I'm the only one still. And when I was mayor, it makes my heart still sing when I look back and think about the young brothers and sisters that had opportunities that they would have never had, because of what was at the helm. And at the end of the day, it goes back to who all is the hiring managers as well too. York has a residency requirement for reasons. It was some of our civil rights icons, if you will, Lee Smallwood and Ray Crenshaw, who thought it necessary to make sure we hire folks that lived in the city that looked like them, give them a chance to make money and work in this community as well. And there's people today fighting to change that. It's, of course, all African Americans don't live in York City. We're all throughout York County, imagine that. But at the end of the day, the hiring managers still within York City don't all look like us either. And if they're able to hire, Kim's going to go there, Billy Bob from the, Dover over Jamil that lives right down the street here, they're going to do that. And it happens all day long. So I contend, I'm sorry, the hiring managers and folks that are able to make those kind of decisions, if we want a system that's going to change, and I won't say get rid of this 2 Americas, because that's another conversation, but at least 2 Yorks, we are going to have to be the ones to do that, African American men and women. And thankfully, those on this panel and the men that was before us, they've been doing that, and that makes me feel good as well. But we all then always have to make sure we're accountable and doing everything right, crossing all the T's and dotting I's, and I guess everyone has to do that. But it just seems like we're often looked at a little bit harder. But at the end of the day, when you do it right, you can sleep real easy now and realize the last 8 years were some of the best the municipality has ever seen. That's my story.
That's spot on, as I knew you would be. Monica, we're talking about there was a question that Ms. Lisa Saunders brought up, talking about the balance, the work balance, life, career pathways, etc. That Black women, I'm going to say, in particular, have to, along with being the savior, and we won't even get back to, once again, not only birthing the nation, no pun intended, but also saving the nation historically, especially down through Georgia and other places, starting with South Carolina, quite frankly. But if you could talk about your experiences, not only with the golf, not only with the mayor, not only with understanding the requirements of balancing a marriage and going to school, developing your career. Now, when you've arrived, now the system as a whole dumps on you in the position of D&I.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to respond to Mayor Bracy, who is one of the most phenomenal mayors York City has ever seen, in York County. And I'm just going to put it out there. I hope you run again, because I've never seen this. I've never seen York City be as vibrant since you've been mayor. So I just hope that you bring that level of vibrancy out back. And I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm just saying I hope you run again.
And
that's all I can say. I want to say something about also something that Mayor Bracy had said earlier, and the importance of diversity, and when you have a seat at the table, who you can bring to the table, and what you can do in that role. There's always opportunities to bring persons of color to the table, or women, or more representation, because it's important to realize that when we're sitting in the roles, whether we're hiring consultants, whether we're hiring employees, so on and so forth, you do not want to get to a point that you're normalizing the process of only hiring people that are not of color, okay? And so you have to remember in the workplace, there's always this push and pull to get back to this normalization of having a white male culture. And it's really sad, but it's really true that we're not embraced as much if we're women or if we're African Americans in the workplace. And oftentimes that there is some friction when we are coming with our different perspectives. Also, oftentimes the best perspectives, I have to say, to actually move an organization forward, or even a city or a town, you know, in the case with me, that would never have, you know, been seen from a perspective had it not been a person of color and a woman. So it's really important to know just nationally, when Black women and when women in general get a seat of leadership, that it does change the trajectory of whether your local community, it changes the trajectory of your organization, and it moves them into the affirmative, where there tends to be more accountability and there are more measures in place to ensure that diversity, equity, and inclusion is there. So in terms of balance, I did see that. I'm going to say right now, I'm kind of spoiled, you all. I'm not married and I've never had children. So I've actually taken on a lot more, you know, because I don't have aging parents, none of those things. So that balance has never really been a problem with me. But I do recognize it as an issue. That's a whole other intersection about a woman not having children and not being married, but that's a whole other issue. So, but I kind of fall into that category. But the balance that I have is really how many committees I sit on, how many boards I'm going to sit on. You know, how am I going to make a difference? I try to get back in other ways.
Yeah.
Carl, can I interject for a second, just on the balance piece, from a perspective of not taking care of myself? I can publicly talk about this now. At the end of my tenure, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And we all know Black women, as I think Tina mentioned earlier, all were at the top of the list for everything. And of course, when you're not taking care of yourself and the stress that goes along with the job, you gain a weight, you had all those chicken dinners and all that good stuff. Yeah, there was no balance. Wanted to be everything and take care of everything and make sure. Thank you, Monica, as well. I don't think I'll be running for mayor again. I like taking care of myself, but you learn. You can't do all of that afterwards. I learned that, like I said, now. Yoga is part of my life now. Relaxation, lots of fresh fruits and vegetables, all those things we read about. Long walks, reading books, things that I have time for right now. Being mayor of a third-class city in Pennsylvania puts a lot on you, much like the CEOs and diversity officers and everyone else on this panel. You have to carve out time for yourself and your family. I can go into stories about the family, but at the end of the day, the best practice is just taking care of you first. Self-care, meditation, prayer, and eating the right things and saying no. I think Charlie mentioned that earlier, and I know you can speak to that now, but saying no has to be part of our vocabulary. But at the end of the day, yeah, we're still supposed to be Wonder Woman and bring along our entire community. Something many of us won't turn our back on, but we have to take care of ourselves. Ladies, please, please, please. Self-examination save lives. I had to say it.
I'm sorry, if I could chime in, I think that's what I was saying, earlier about this desire to live up to this expectation that we have to do it all, that because we are Black women and that we have to always put those capes on, that we don't allow, when we say no, to say, I can help show somebody, and then let them do it from that point on. But I think that also the other important thing, as I reflect on my own and trying to balance, I've been married for 32 years, have 2 sons, expecting my first grandchild soon, is just that to realize that it is a marathon, not a sprint. And so even in pursuing my education, I didn't go back and get my master's until my oldest son graduated from high school, because I knew for me, it was important to be available to my children during those formative years. And then, waited a little bit and went back and got my doctorate. And so just, remembering again that it is not a sprint, that at each stage of our lives, there's a plan and a purpose for that stage. And the real thing that we can do in terms of self-care is be in the plan and purpose of that stage of our lives and be present in it, and not try to do everything that somebody else is doing. So just being genuine and authentic and transparent with ourselves to say, hey, this is too much right now, and I need to cut back and drill back and take care of yourself and those we love, right? So I just encourage people to, take the race, right?
Great. Thank you, Charla. And it's great to see you again. And thank you, Karl, for hosting this event. I think this is a dynamic group of women who are authentic and purposeful. And I look forward to connecting again at some point. I just have to say that it really does take all of us working together. And, the conversation around how do you balance it all? For each and every one of us, that looks different. And I think you have to understand your life's mission, vision, and purpose, and check that once in a while to make sure you're moving in the right direction, and seek out the support you need. If it's only for a short time, great. For a longer period, that's wonderful too, but be there when someone reaches out so that you can reach back and pull folks up. That's how we're going to move forward.
Thank you for the invitation to participate in today's conversation. I hope it is the first of many. I think that there are so many issues that we can really tackle not just nationally and broadly, but very specifically. I always tell Karl specifically that I love his statewide focus, and that I think that we can be a true force working across state to advance our collective agenda and well-being. So I'm over here in Pittsburgh, ready to work with whomever to advance, whatever is going to be beneficial to our community. So salute to all of you beautiful ladies, and to you, Karl.
Thank you. I feel like we've only just begun to scratch the surface. I would love to have this conversation again with this group of ladies, because we really need to do a deeper dive. We talked briefly about two Americas and Black women, but the thing that comes to my mind is who got us? Who has us as Black women? The question is always, and Lisa Saunders asked, how do we balance it? And that it is a balancing act, and that's something that we're all constantly working on. And like anybody that knows me, any friends of mine, they know that I'm a real big believer, and this is not the most feminist of philosophies. I'm a true proponent of hold it down for your household. I believe in it, but what holding it down for your household might mean, it might not look like what our grandmothers did. So today, to be able to balance and to have some self-care time, instead of Southern fried chicken on a Wednesday night, you might get air fryer wings and Kraft Deluxe and steam bagged broccoli, but it's a balanced meal. But I provided for my family today. It also means that I'm gonna schedule that massage that I need, because anytime I feel my tension forming up in my neck and my back and shoulders, because I'm gonna take that time for me, or going to the gym, or having my cup of tea, or even drawing an Epsom salt bath, because that's what I need to do for myself. It means advocating for yourself on the job, speaking up when you feel like you're not being heard. It means showing up in our relationships with our friends. It means demanding reciprocity in our relationships from our men. And so it's not enough that we just show up for them. And we hear the words, but we need for people to show up for us, not just in word, but also in deed, and that's not just in our personal relationships, but that's in our professional relationships. So we have two mayors on this line. I think about from the realm of the political, Black women showed up in numbers for Hillary Clinton, even when white women did not. Black women showed up for Joe Biden, when white women did not, other people did not. But when push comes to shove, who shows up for us? And because we don't have, as comedian Paul Mooney calls it, the complexion for protection, nobody shows up for us. So Breonna Taylor's murderers, they get away with a charge of wanton endangerment, and not even for her life, for three of her neighbors. Nobody's ever charged for her death. But in the converse, you look at Officer Muhammad Noor in Minneapolis, Minnesota, who said that he feared for his life. He used the common phrase that police use, "Well, I fear for my life," when white woman Justine Diamond walks out of the dark and shows up in front of his police car, and he immediately, to his defense, in protection of his partner, he pulls his gun and he shoots her dead. Well, as a white woman, her in her own defense, her lawyer said, well, surely she wasn't a threat. You couldn't have possibly perceived her as a threat. Who is she threatening as? But Black women are always perceived as a threat. So Breonna Taylor is in her bed, sleeping, shot dead, and nothing's done. Daniel Cameron does not bring charges to the grand jury to even consider homicide in her case. Nobody shows up for us. On the job, when we have microaggressions that we know are not really micro at all, when you see a Black woman being silenced in the meeting, and you have, maybe a white male supervisor, a Black male supervisor, even a white woman who is going to say, excuse me, Monica was talking, excuse me, Anna was talking, excuse me, Tina was talking, or Tina said that to me, Marimba said that earlier, that was her idea. Who checks that and corrects that? So what I would challenge, and what I'd like to leave as a final thought, is who got us? We got everybody, and we have our own backs. And if it seems like we're super women, and maybe sometimes we're overcompensating or compensating, and we get called angry and aggressive and all these other things, it's because a lot of the times we do not feel that anybody is showing up for us. So what we need is not just the words, but the deeds. show up for us.
Thank you guys so much for having me again. I'm honored and humbled to be amongst the females that are here. You guys keep me sharp, keep me on task. The thing that I want to leave everyone with is that, we oftentimes have to look at so many different lenses as Black women, Black and brown women. We have to look at the idea of the two Americas and where we fit into that. We have to look at the idea of where we fit into our own communities, where we fit here, where we fit there, and just really encouraging people to be clear on their assignment. You are most valuable in the world when you are clear about who you are, when you are confident in your ability, when your mental health is on point, being able to seek out therapy, being able to take care of yourself, mind, body, and soul. It's just so important for us to be clear on who we are, whose we are, and what assignment we are on in order for us to help other individuals in their assignment. So I want to encourage Black and brown women that there are amazing women that have done this before you, that are doing it now, and that are more than willing to help you to leave the legacy for what it will look like after they have transitioned out of here. So I want to encourage women that have gone before me, to just be intentional and unapologetic in making sure that we are able and confident to stand alongside of you all and give us the tools that we need. We are listening, we are ready, we are capable, we are hungry for it. And then for those individuals that may be younger than us and are coming up, for the young ladies, the beautiful Black women, know and be confident in the fact that you have a village, even though it doesn't always look like it, even though it doesn't always feel like it, and even though they don't showcase our villages on TV and media. We are educated, we are beautiful, we are strong, and we have every opportunity and desire available to us in this world, just like anyone else. So please make sure that you are not thinking about passing the baton, but lighting the way for us in order for us to illuminate a path for the people that are coming in after you all. So I thank you guys for this opportunity.
Well, to echo the comments of other panelists, thank you for the invitation today. This has been such an inspiring time for me. And so I'm just grateful to kind of echo Anna's words, just grateful for the women whose shoulders that I stand on, my ancestors who fought, struggled, died so that I could be where I am today. And just being open to allow other women to be able to stand on top of my shoulders. I think what's important to me in these final moments of this podcast are sharing the importance of legacy, and that we all have a responsibility as Black women to leave a legacy that empowers and strengthens other Black women, Black men, our communities, and that we have a God-given gift to do it in such a way that embraces love, life, grace, mercy, all of those qualities that are essential in helping people to walk in their own purpose and plan and do it well. So I just thank all of you ladies for being here today. I have learned so much. I want to continue the conversation as well. And again, thanks to all of you.
Thank you all again. I think you called on me, Karl. The sound. Okay, great. Thank you. Again, honored to be here with all the other women. Definitely an honor just to be part of this, and very humbling. I love my Blackness. I love being a Black woman, and I stand on that. Also stand on many shoulders of women look like me that came before me, and I just am thankful for that opportunity as well too. I look forward to our future conversations and future podcasts, and just continue to have this conversation that will hopefully result in action by all of us doing what we can within our space for others. Thank you all very much, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today.
I want to echo what Tamika said. It's very important that we take care of ourselves and make sure people take care of us as well. I also want to say, as we move forward on this MLK Day, that, we look to, to seek out people who need to be mentored to be stronger sisters to each other. Each of us is coming to the table with our own experiences that could be shared even with each other. And fortunate for me, I know many of the women that are on the panel, and I've had an opportunity to talk to them. And this is something that hopefully we can continue as we move forward. I just want to just share a quote by James Baldwin just to close it out. He says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." So now we know what we need to do in our community to uplift ourselves and to uplift each other. Let's do it. Thank you.